They're taking all our jobs.
What qualifications do you have?
None. They're taking all the qualifications as well.
When I went to top research universities in India, ISC Bangalore, which is top 100 in India, actually ISC Bangalore, which is top 100 in the world for research, most of the PhDs are denying to come to the US.
I really want the United States to succeed. And I believe the United States will succeed with the domestic population working in tandem with its international students and demographic as well.
Hello everyone, today I am with Sudhanshu. He is the founder and chairman of North American Association for Indian Students at a national level. He is one of the first one to create. He founded it when he was in college. We'll get to know about his journey. Most importantly, the goal of this video is to figure out what is the international students we see in the next few years, how they should cope up with the challenges, how they should cope up with not just like challenges from visa perspective, but also from their career perspective. There are a lot of shortcomings in the system that we had seen in colleges that Sudhanshu has faced. System wasn't perfect in any way, and we both agree with it. We will talk about how the system will improve and how students can make best use out of it. So hi Sudhanshu, can you please introduce yourself?
Hey, Anur, thank you so much for having me. As you said, I'm the executive director and founder of the North American Association of Indian Students. We are the only organization that works in the collective interest of international Indian students, where there are always upwards of 3 lakh people studying at any given undergrad, graduate, or on their OPT visa, part of their F1 visa. So trying to look for their best interest, who advocates on their behalf towards the government at a federal level, at a state level, at a local level, who looks after their safety, right? Talking to police departments around colleges and departments, who makes sure that they have opportunities, who makes sure that, STEM is expanded rather than decreased, making sure that, you're working with legislative policy, you're working directly with the students, that they have a community. It's a very big country. People just think of the United States as New York, SF, and then they land in University of South Dakota. So making sure that people are connected with one another, their culture, and they have a community, and they're people that are fighting for their interests on their behalf. That's what NAAS does.
Excellent. And I want to know how you got inspired. Like, you were born and brought up in the US, right?
Yeah.
So how you got inspired to create for international students, especially Indian students who come from abroad, and an organization and leading it now, like such a great organization. I've seen so many of your posts. You are so forefront with all the news coming with international students. You try to give the right information and, reduce the fear if there is some fear mongering.
Yeah. So I was actually born, raised, and I like to say born, raised, and scarred in Alabama. So some of your viewers might know where Alabama is. But I made up the diversity. It was 99.99% Caucasians, and then me, Sudhanshu. So I was always othered, right? And regardless of if I was born here or not, for them, I was always different, right? And so I think from the very onset, I knew that the way people treated me would always be different. So I grew up with that mindset. I got engaged in civic engagement. But as I got to college, I realized that even though I was othered, it was from a societal perspective. But when I saw my F1 student friends freshman year of college, they take so much risk, they pay so much money, they go to college, and they were not just being othered because of societal values. They were also othered in terms of policy, in terms of regulation. You can't work for so hours. You can't work in these specific areas. You can't do these certain things. And that's what really got me passionate about trying to understand more about, F1 students, especially from India, who come here. And then on top of that, the more that we looked into it, Arnur, you realize how big of an impact Indian students specifically, but also international students overall make to the US economy, to the US society, to US culture, to, US small towns in the middle of nowhere because of their presence. And so that kind of got more interested. I did a lot of academic research papers during undergrad at NYU. And then all of a sudden I realized who helps them out, who works for their favor. As soon as the agent is done from their side, You send across the international student to the United States system.
Now I want to get into what's happening currently. So what's happening with international students is obviously not good. Like, there's fear, there's more vetting on social media. So now my question here is that, like, how did we get here? What is broken in international student system in the US, or the education system in the US, and how did we reach here, and what is the future, how it's going to get better?
That's a really good framing of a question, Harnur, because I like what you said. How did we get here? Not that, in 25, everything got disrupted. That is not the case, right? It's very easy for someone to say that because of some administration, because of some politician, things have gone awry. That's not the case. This has been a ongoing issue, right? And it's not just F1 visas. It's the larger, immigration policies that impact, your J1 counterparts, but then it impacts H1B students, which, H1B visa holders that F1 and J1s want to transition to. It affects green cards. It obviously affects naturalized citizens. So first and foremost, this is not on January 1st or on January 20th, 2025, everything changed. Absolutely not, right? And I'll get into, what we've gotten there. But I also, at the same time, want to say that every day, I think this is it. This is the max you can do to impact and disrupt the system. And then every day there's a new thing. Every day there's a new policy. There's a new regulation. There's something or the other that's happening, which is just like, whoa, they're doing this. They're doing that. I remember, we all heard about like the Harvard issue, and they were getting into a lot of trouble with their funds, and I was like, okay, this is what they could do. And the next day you wake up,
and Belgium's prince leaving, and a few days after, Belgium's prince is leaving the country.
Right.
For visa.
Yeah, and then the next day you wake up to, they've stopped international students from going into Harvard. Then the next day you wake up to is like, now they're targeting larger universities. And then the next day you wake up to is, visa interviews have stopped, and then the next day you wake up to is Chinese national students have had their visas rescinded. So it's just like every day is just a whole new kind of layering an issue. But again, that being said, it is too difficult. Genuinely, it's too overcomplicated in any administration historically to study in the United States. I'm not saying gaining admission in the United States. I'm saying studying and thriving in the United States. And it shouldn't be, right? It should be much easier. And there are so many regulatory frameworks in mind, so many barriers that make it more complicated, that really get in the way. And so that's what I really, we should focus about, is how, since the mid 20th century, right? So since the 20th century, the increase of international students has skyfolded, right? And yet, how we make it easier for them hasn't simplified. It's actually gotten more complicated. Like, I'm really curious, if an international student is coming to study, right, in your university, he's paying tuition, they're legally, and they're doing well, and they're highly qualified or higher qualified than any of their counterparts, right? Then why don't you let them work at peace? What is it specifically about, they should be STEM to get 2 more years, right? Why can't you get more time to be able to kind of study and work here without having a headache? I mean, you have paid, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get this opportunity, and you have a running time clock, right? And this whole idea of, you have, a certain amount of days before you have to get a job. But what if the job market is doing bad? There are little things that you can add to make a student's life easier, and they should have done 20, 30 years ago, that they constantly, make it more complicated. So that's why you see a lot of students doing a lot of interesting things, right? The fact that you're not allowed to work on your F1 visa outside of like specific CPT, OPT requirements, it makes international students do tough jobs, under the counter jobs. They go to different places to be able to just afford a living here. The fact that, you have a certain amount of period of time before you're kicked out makes students really desperate, and they're like, oh, let me do another higher education. So I'm doing full-time school and I'm doing full-time work just so I can keep a job. Or trying to get a job, you work with these consultancies that have outsourced, and they're really, really shady in the way that they do their business. But that's the only option that you have. It should not be this difficult, and you should not be punished for trying to dream of a better life, to trying to dream about a higher education in the United States. There's a fascination behind it. It's an amazing, amazing place to study. I mean, Harnoor, you have gone to all those universities. I've personally visited over 200 college universities here in the United States, and everyone is different. Everyone is amazing, and every campus has so much potential, right? There's so many things you can do. If there's a business you have in your mind, you can implement it here, right? If there's like a scientific research you want to do, there's funding here. The basic curriculum you'll get, I just feel like it's so competitive in a way that's good, because you get so many diverse thoughts and opinions, and it's just not, oh, I'm learning math, science, English. No, I can be studying some abstract idea, and there will be an expert there. And if people are fascinated by that, if people are willing to pay good money for that, if people are willing to enter legally and follow all the rules for that, you should be promoting that. You shouldn't be making it easier, not making it more difficult.
So you mentioned a lot of challenges for international students that they face. Of course, like starting with the visa rejection rate of 40% of the visas are rejected in India. Like 60% of students get visas already before this administration. But right now, things are more difficult. You agree, right? So, okay. So I want to know, when I went to top research universities in India, ISC Bangalore, which is top 100 in India, actually ISC Bangalore, which is top 100 in the world for research, most of the PhDs are denying to come to the US. Maybe undergrad, masters who just want to get into tech industry, they are okay to come to the US. But the research side that brings a lot of Indian students and international students to the US is kind of broken. What do you think about this current situation right now?
It's getting worse, right? Obviously, you're right. Like this was an accumulation of so many years of bad policy, bad judgment, bad regulation that's made it to a point where people are saying, is it worth it to go to the United States? Is it worth it to pay all this money? But now it's kind of like accelerated in a way, right? And look, you're talking about, is the situation, or is it cumbersome for international students? But I want to look at the opposite side. F1 students coming to your university, researchers are coming to your university in your country, is good for the United States. Higher education in the United States was a zero-sum game. But what I mean by that, it was a win-win scenario for United States. Why do I say that? You have tuition money coming in, you have students coming in, you have talent coming in, right? Then you get to pick and place them. You have a very small funnel. You put them in like the highest priority areas. And where your domestic population skill set falls, you supplement with international segmentation, and they're willing to come at a cheaper rate, at a more work hour, more ethics, etc., etc. And what I really saw that was kind of interesting is that, I really want the United States to succeed. And I believe the United States will succeed with the domestic population working in tandem with its international students and demographic as well. And just in the past, 6 months, there's something that's really interesting coming out, Harnoor, that I think you should also be paying attention to, is when it comes to the strategic areas of national importance, national security importance for the United States. Research areas, right? Whether it's, space studies, whether it's deep tech, whether it's, deep science, etc. National strategic value for the United States. Research and the international student demographic has decreased there. And that is really important, right? Because students who would have like to come to the United States to be able to do the research that they were thinking about that would ultimately end up helping the United States and its strategic interest and its national security are choosing not to come. They're choosing to stay back. They're choosing to go to China. They're choosing to go to Germany. They're choosing to go to the United States competitors, not just in higher education. This is the larger focal point. They're choosing to go to competitors that United States has on national security and basically, strategic interests. And that is the biggest worrisome right now, right? From a United States perspective, you need these students to come. It was a win-win situation. You got the best minds, the brightest thoughts to be able to better the interest and the goals and the pursuits of the country itself, the safety, the security. They've done it all the time, right? You look at all the biggest kind of industry leaders right now in the United States as it comes to national strategic value. I mean, it's a partnership within the domestic and the international talent that they have. And that's how it should be. But in the past 6 months, that's not the case. Recent studies have found that the people are choosing to just stay back. Like you said, people are choosing to stay back in, the research universities in India, or they're willing to go to Germany. They're willing to go to China. And the direct uh, basically benefactor of any student not interested or choosing not to go to the United States is a United States competitor. And I think the United States needs to think deeply about that.
Okay, so my question here is, of course, this year would be very difficult for international students. It's not a lie. But how would this industry run differently for the US and for the international students as compared to the past years? Of course, they're not targeting specific groups. So let's say that, they're saying international students coming from this country into healthcare or this category. They're not narrowing. They just had a ban for 3 weeks for all international students to make it stricter social media vetting. So can you elaborate how it's going to be difficult or different for international students this year and next 2 years at least?
Yeah. 3 years, next 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Look, there's a lot of different things that are happening. This morning, right before we started shooting this podcast, Harnoor, that there was new regulation that the U.S. Embassy in India came out with about making sure that any applicant that submits their F1 student visa, that the social media that you put in needs to not be private but public, right? And this is, I think, for the very first time. Look, we know that we used to send social media and adapt social media, but that was nothing that was really given much thought out, right? It was just there. You added it. Some people wouldn't do it. They would still get the visa. And now every applicant's social media needs to be public, right? And that's a very big kind of personal situation in context. And I don't think the courts here can do anything about it, actually. This is going to be the new status quo for at least the next 3 years, is that your social media will have to be public and accessible by anyone at the online to be able to get a visa, right? So these are these nuances that obviously have an impact on the psyche. How safe are you, right? How much privacy do you have? What sort of freedoms do you have? And I used to go around, a year before, doing workshops for admitted students to say that, listen, you have the freedom of speech. It's the United States. There are constitutional guarantees that you have. You can bet, Harnoor, that I won't be saying the same thing anymore on those workshops, right? When it says about, the changes that you're accepting in anticipation as you study, of course, people are going to be more mindful of what they say, whether it's in the classroom or whether it's in, social media. They're going to be careful about what place they're seen at, whether it's a protest, whether it's a workshop, whether it's, an event. So there will be that sort of fear. Now, do I think that it will completely put the fear in everyone's head and, they won't come? I don't think so. I think people who are invested in becoming the best researchers, they will come to the United States. I think the people who are invested in, trying to have a career in the United States in, finance, they will come to the United States, the best engineers. Do I think that we're losing out on the top talent because people have choices? Harnoor, if you are the best at what you do, any country wants you. you have the freedom to choose. Do I want a life that was in some aspects be mimicked as a surveillance state where I won't be able to say and do what I want to do? Or can I chill in some European country, have, the best winters and summers and do my work and be appreciated for it and have no prosecution of it? The choice is yours. So if I have that option, I will take it. But at the same time, I don't think um, that, these changes will disrupt the entire market, that you will see drastic drop numbers. Absolutely not, because maybe Harnoor decides not to study in the United States. What, there's another Harnoor somewhere in Punjab who is just as adamant of going to Georgia Tech and studying for their masters there, who will apply and who is completely okay. If he can't become a YouTube vlogger, it's okay. He'll still work at Microsoft as an engineer, right? There's just so many people. There's so many people that are willing to do it, and they're willing to take the chance, and they're willing to go for it, because at the end of the day, the U.S. does provide the best education. The U.S. does provide the best opportunities. Yes, there's an inflection rate. The job market can't be as good, so now people are thinking about other things, like I said, the legal issues, and no one wants someone breathing down their neck. I mean, to be honest, Arnoor, I feel that a lot of students and a lot of researchers come from India because they want that freedom. No one, society, whatever it is, brother, the government breathing down your neck saying, "Oh, ye nahi kar sakte, wo nahi kar sakte, you can't do this, you can't do that." What, they come to the United States to feel freedom for that, not have them have a foreign government tell you that sort of stuff, right? So yeah, I mean, look, you're gonna have a 10% decrease, but that's not unheard of, right? In COVID, we had a decrease, right? Then we slowly started picking back up. During the '08 housing crisis, we had a decrease, right? Then it slowly started picking up. 2001, we had a decrease. But the numbers fluctuate. So I don't think this is a complete disruption. I think I think this allows the university to rethink how they're seeking out students, what they're offering to the students. Maybe it's actually an opportunity as well. I think that do I do think that after whatever happens right now, I think the higher powers, whoever they may be, here in the United States, will realize that your higher education, whether it's the $9 billion of direct economy impact that Indian students do, or the 40 billion indirect that international or direct international students do, and overall $200 billion indirect to the local economy that international higher education does, it's a value add. It's a win-win game. And I think they will figure out or try to understand, how do we make up for the time lost? How do we make up for the credibility lost? How do we really reach out there? And so what you'll see is they will try to hopefully make policies, regulations, living much better. Right. So the disruptions, the issues that we were talking about, that this isn't just an issue that happened in 2025. This has been ongoing for the past 15 years. I think they will try to solve that. I think they will try to extend some issues, even though you will have pushback. Right. Just 2 weeks ago, I was hearing that a Republican legislature introduced a bill, which happens all the time, by the way. This is not new, but they introduced a bill to basically get rid of OPT, right? STEM. And then you actually have, this is the larger, scarier part, the individual who is supposed to lead, if appointed by the Senate and approved, they are looking to basically get rid of the STEM OPT, right? That is a constant fear. If you get rid of it, why wouldn't higher education or is someone from international individual in the STEM field come, right? Because then you would just have 1 year that you would be able to provide. So I think that these issues will keep happening. There will be little hurdles, there will be barriers, there will be statements, there will be policy changes. But I think overall, people will still want to come. And I think I am hopeful that in the longer road, this will allow the government itself, policymakers, to realize the benefit of international students. And I hope they take that realization and convert it into policy to making it even better in terms of the academic freedom, the study ability, the work ability for international students.
As they say, sometimes destruction is important for construction.
I didn't know they said that, but okay.
Of course, like in coding, you say sometimes you have to delete in order to,
Yeah.
add new stuff. So, of course, the system wasn't perfect. For example, like these top universities, Harvard, MIT, Stanford, Cambridge, Oxford, these universities accept 50% of the students who come from elite backgrounds, go to top schools, who have the richest families. The inflation rate for tuition fee is 6 to 8% in the US, but inflation overall is 2 to 3%. The reason is because they intentionally limit the supply so demand remains same and the cost increases. So they have been like that has been against even the American students. Less American students can get in because they show off the acceptance rate is 1, 2, or 5%. So when university is doing so amazing, they should hire more professors and get more students as well. Don't you agree?
Mm,
System is not perfect.
Bountiful education. The more accessible education is, the better. The more ability. I would actually reframe that instead of, us trying to expand Harvard or Yale or, MIT. I would say, why not give more resources and research and funding to, University of Missouri or to, South Dakota University or Montana State University. Make their pool, their capability, their research, which already exists quite a bit, right? Make that more accessible. It's going to be much cheaper. It's going to be, more in some cases more diverse, different, and have that excellent. You don't have to put all the resources in like these top 7 schools or whatever you want to do. You make sure that it's accessible. So yes, the person who can afford and who is talented enough can get into Harvard, but at the same time, if someone that doesn't get there but goes to a Montana State University can get the best education, get the same amount of resources, and get the same amount of basically leads and credibility. That's what I ideally would hope for, right? I think it's going to be a hard battle to let Harvard say, hey, you should accept more students. They're just not going to. But why would someone choose to pay 10 times more at Harvard when they can get the same amount of opportunities and networking the aspect in a Montana State University? I've never understood. I mean, it's a win-win for the United States, right? But the fact that students are willing to pay 5 times the sticker price, sometimes 7 times the sticker price of tuition than a domestic student. If I'm someone in Texas and I go to UT Austin, right? It will basically be for free for me. 4 years of education, whatever. An international student will end up paying $70,000 to $80,000 per year to the university for 4 years. Imagine, right? Every international student pays almost 5 to 7 times more. And it's a great business model for the university because international students keep coming. But I wish it was more of an egalitarian system. I wish there was more equity among that. I wish that, sure, maybe not make it equal, maybe not make it for free because obviously it's at the end of the day a business, but make it maybe 2 times more expensive. You're still going to be earning more money. Like, just yeah, why is it not possible? But yeah, I mean, I think that we need to make it more universities, more colleges in general, more equal. But we also need to be mindful that we need to equip the colleges need to equip their international students. Look, so I want to take a framework out. This might not be directly answering your question, but there's a statistic that everyone knows, right? And this is what scares universities the most: is domestic enrollment plateaued, right, in 2010s, and it started to decrease now, right? So the amount of in domestic students that are going to a U.S. higher education 4-year system, right, had plateaued in the 2010s, and now it's decreasing after always increasing. So when it started plateauing, universities were like, listen, we need to open the international student market substantially more. So pele they would say 5, 10, 15%, you would do it. Now, if you notice, since 2015, since that, people have stopped requiring the GRE. Some cases they've stopped requiring TOEFL and IELTS. Sometimes they do fee waivers, right? Why are they doing that? Because the big catch is the $50,000-$70,000 tuition that you will pay, right? So they already know that. So they've been trying to increase and that make up that domestic, intake. by the international student demographic, right? They've already been trying to do that. This is the overarching problem that US colleges and universities have. So they've tried to make it easier. Now, international students keep coming. They will take that opportunity. The more accessible it is, the more people you will have, right? When I talk to a lot of donors and a lot of these Indian American people who came, um, 30, 40 years ago, they don't understand the psyche or the demographic of the current international Indian student, right? Pehle, in the 1980s, 90s, it was always very, very privileged, right? Not to say that there were millionaires, billionaires, they still struggled here, right? But substantially more privileged. They were, and if we're going to socioeconomic statuses, they would be from urban areas, right? They would most likely be, not from minorities, not from marginalized groups, upper caste, etc. They would be a big mix of that. Now, what's happened now, because of the accessibility, because all these universities have dropped a lot of requirements, right? Then you have all these agents, then the expense in terms of applying is less, right? Even though expense of studying is more. Then you have all these funding opportunities, right? Businesses that are created just on the pure basis of the international higher education market, right? What people have done now is that it's much easier to get into the colleges and universities. It's much easier to get the money to study there, right? So that instead of the Delhi, socioeconomically high standard person that was used to going in abroad, now you have people from, rural India, down south in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, forget Vijayawada, Visakhapatnam, Hyderabad. You have people from, and forget Guntur, right? You have people from villages who have never stepped foot into, like, let's say Hyderabad, but they're going to the United States, right? Because it's that accessibility. It's the fascination, obviously, but it's that accessibility. So the universities have capitalized on that. They know that there's this fascination, especially from China and India. They know that the industry has been built so that you have loan providers, you have, all these other businesses that make it easier for a person to come, even though they don't have the resources, etc. Now I think the ball is then back into the university's courts. Is what are you doing with it? It frustrates me that, there are universities that will accept 100, 150 international Indian students, and they still have, one person in their international student office. What is one person supposed to do with just 150 Indian students, right? And that's not even counting the Chinese students, and that's not counting different ones. And every single nationality has their own issues, their own culture, their own background as they come and study their problems. And we have not invested again in the basic frameworks to make life easier for the international student. We have only invested in the marketing. Come, study, study, study. But the lifestyle, the day to day, we universities have not invested in it. And that's already a problem. And it's going to be a much bigger problem as we continue to go ahead.
100%. That is for sure a problem for international students. But if you think about the hatred for international students, where it comes for, since 1980s, like after FDR was president, education in the US for American students were almost like, they take loan for, let's say, $20,000-$30,000, and they get for 4 years, I'm saying, and they get a job of $50,000-$60,000. And they used to get the return of their loan on education within a year, American students. But now education is even restricted for them. They take bigger loans if they want to good schools, good private schools, and they take like 300K loan. The international student, or the student debt in the US for American students is so high. Education became restricted for them, more accessible for international students. Hate came towards international students because it's more accessible for them and they're doing better than local students. And that hate brings us and we reach here.
Yeah. So first of all, I don't think it's from all sections of society, right? I think that sometimes when you see hate in the United States, and we deal with a lot of hate crimes against international students, there are two or three different reasons, right? One is wrong place at the wrong time, right? It's not necessarily hate against the international student. It is, okay, there is a gang that, is active in a part of LA,
Gas
right?
station
And in that gas station, and that gas station, a student is working, to be able to afford being and living here. and then he's caught at the wrong place at the wrong time. That's one situation, right? That's not an international hate, etc. Then yeah, I mean, you see an increase in smaller sections. I actually will disagree with you, Harnoor, that I think that overall Americans are very accepting of international students, especially Indian students, as of now, right? The crop of people that have come, right, to the United States, that, you know, we're good people. And I think Americans also know that, right? I can't say about the undocumented people that are coming, that are using asylum refugee cases inappropriately, illegally, etc. Those are a different layer. And the politics of it is in a whole level. But at the end of the day, I think that there's a big understanding, whether it's in New York or whether it's in a small town in Idaho, that a lot of these international students who come, they mind their own business, they work, and the jobs that they're taking, whether it's while they're in a university or whether that's, you know, graduating, it's not the same competition with the domestic student demographic, right? If you have someone who is a very highly skilled expert in, you know, a new language in machine learning, or whatever, you know, update that's come in, the domestic student demographic that's 50 years old and works in Texas is not the competitor. Right? He's not suitable for that position, right? That same guy, the 50-year-old, you know, Texan politician, will not politician, Texan like citizen, will not be working at a gas station. It's just not his competitor, right? So I think that, you know, obviously because the abundance of other immigrant groups, other people that are coming there, I think that we are easy to scapegoat the blame to Indian students or overall international students, but that's not the case. And that's a misnomer that they're taking it, right? So I think we need to be mindful of that. That I think that I'm very much optimistic in this case that Americans inherently benefit from international students, and international students are welcomed by Americans here, whether that's in New York or whether that's in a small town in, you know, rural Kansas. That being said, there are issues, and students have been victims of hate crimes directly targeted and indirectly. What I think can change about this, right, is that if we have better connections to our government, that international students have better relationships with the state, the local administration, they have better relationships with, police department, if they know, and the colleges and the universities are helping them assimilate better, then there's more understanding, there's more learning, there's more situations in, okay, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable, right? And look, we all have to follow new rules. You can't do the same things you do in India and get away with it. That's a very, very big issue when I see a lot of the international students coming, especially from India, is that what you did in Vijayawada is not allowed in the same way that you do here. You can't just, you know, litter. You can't just, you know, sell a, you know, open shop, whatever. Like there are things that you have to follow, standards that are different. And, you know, I'm always in this crossroads of assimilation, but assimilation at what cost, right? Anytime you go to a Western country, you will be asked to assimilate. Take the good assimilation. Stop littering, you know, stop peeing outside in the nature. Make sure that you follow those rules. But at the same time, Harnoor, you know as much as I, if you go to Atlanta, you still have the Indian stores, you still have the Indian culture, you still have the Bollywood nights, you still have the Telugu nights, you still have all these mediums to make sure the temples, the worship, everything. Indians still have the ability to get their culture, to stay in touch with their culture in the United States while also assimilating and getting the good parts of the American society too.
Absolutely. I think since we come from like since India has the highest number of fluent English speakers in the world, language is not a problem in the US. And because language is not a problem, assimilating is not very hard. We're familiar with American movies, Hollywood, so it becomes easier. Now, my big question
It's a very natural relationship,
100%.
right? Like I genuinely believe, and maybe I'm biased because I am a big proponent of India and US relations, but India and US are naturally very, very, very similar, and it's a benefactor relationship both.
100%. Now, important question for you. I think the students, you said 10% less Indian students will come to the US. Now, the problem comes here is that there are two categories of students who will not come to the US. Number one, researchers, and number two, people who bet their whole career on the debt they come to the US. They take 100, 200K debt and maybe sell their properties, and just on a bet that they will get that 200K tech job or 100K tech job and life will be set. Who are hearing the news like STEM OPT will be over, they are less likely to take that bet now. So what advice you have for them?
Yeah, I genuinely believe that everyone should have the right to dream. Everyone should have the right to pursue that dream of studying higher education, of a better life. This is what America was founded on, right? Immigrants hoping for a better life, a better outcome, and they, traversed like the ocean to be here, right? And that's the same thing that, Indians want as well. They think that they will potentially have a better life. That being said, you also need to be smart about it, right? And this is where I really have a problem with is it's not the ambition and the dreams, right? But people slash businesses who misuse those emotions, right, to sell a dream that might not exist, right? Especially to those people who can't afford to dream, right? And that's what I fear. And you might know what I'm talking about, but like I get really frustrated when I see all these businesses that have popped up and they're saying that, you go study, you'll get a job, and then all you need is to take this loan and you can pay it back in 4 years, or, disability and that sort of stuff. If that possibility doesn't exist, right, what happens? So I think that, the onus is on the student and also the businesses and colleges and universities in general too, right? I'm not going to spare them from that, is we need to be really careful in terms of how we're marketing and how we're pitching. We need to make sure that, India actually gets some regulation on the agents that exist. Right now, there's very limited regulation, by the way, if you look at it from an Indian perspective, right? I'm hyper focusing on India in terms of how they regulate the higher education study abroad agents that exist. Right now, it's a free for all. Anyone takes a visa case, anyone takes it, they come up with their own shop. I mean, people who have never stepped foot inside the countries have been selling, applications and visas to the highest bidder to all these universities. We need to have, I think, more structure. We need to have more regulation within the domestic market so that only people that are qualified, that are credible, that have an inherent best interest with the student in mind rather than how much money they'll make, right? I've met so many people who will send students to a rural college town just because they got a better, referral fee, right? But was that college the best for that student? No, it was absolutely not the best decision. But because the student has dreams, the agent takes advantage of that. The businesses providing student loans takes advantage of that. And then obviously college takes advantage of that. The student in this scenario becomes the victim. And why did they become a victim? Because they had dreams, because they wanted to pursue a higher education. We need to make that more equal. So yes, it's a great thing that higher education in the United States has become more accessible, but accessible at what costs, right? And that's the focus, and that's kind of what we also talk about to the people here in the United States, the federal government, the state government. But we are a 501c3 nonprofit here. We work on a non-for-profit basis here in the United States. We don't have any jurisdiction in India. That's where we need to get more awareness of. And the more that Indian students become aware, right? Not just, oh, they know what university they want to go to, but especially the students who become aware of the consequences of the land that they're selling and how much can they actually get back, or the loans that they're taking on the property that they have. Once they understand the consequences of that decisions and the realistic output, I think they will make better decisions. But the unfortunate thing is those students who make those decisions are not given the clearer picture. Like you said, in one time they said, okay, you have 3 years to study, right? You'll make 80 to 90,000. If you take a 80, 90,000, loan, ek saal mein pay karke, you make money, and then that's the picture even now that's pointed to us, right? But you know how expensive it is to live here. You know how tough it is to get a job. You know how people are undercutting you and not paying you exactly what you should be paid for, right? And then on top of that, the interest and all these like loan sharks that come in or that are selling an accessible education, but they're not. It's an issue, right? It makes it more complicated. So I would say that we really need to think about, that perspective and really think about making education more accessible, but making more students aware of what cost that education comes from. And if the costs are much greater than what you can afford, then I think that you need to still dream, still have ambition, still have lives, but see it where a place that might not cost as much. And when I say that cost, I don't just mean monetary. I mean emotional, I mean safety, I mean the physical costs as well.
100%. I totally agree with you here that it's a fact that US had been in the past for privileged people. Now it's more accessible from a local market point of view from India, it's still not as accessible it could be. My last question would be about NAS. So can you share how does NAS work? What is the business side of it? And how does how do you see NAS as a business in the next few years if you're planning to continue?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're continuing to work and increase, but look, there is no business side. NAAIS is a not-for-profit. We are a 501c3 nonprofit from the United States IRS Department. We do not work for money. Our measurable outcomes, our KPIs are not money that we made. It's the amount of impact, the amount of students we helped, the amount of engagement we did, the amount of communities we helped, the amount of student clubs that we were able to build. So NWS is again a not-for-profit. Our money to do operations, to sponsorships come from people who are willing to donate, right? So if there are Indian Americans who feel that we are helping Indian students, they can donate, they can get a tax break on their income, and we are able to do events, we're able to help students, we're able to sponsor someone's food. We are the only organization that is working on Indian international students at a national level. We have over 150 chapters, all the way from Harvard University to University of Texas to Stanford University, where we affiliate. We have done events. We did over 250 sponsored events where we paid for food, we paid for merchandise, and we did a Bollywood trivia, etc. Our only agenda is to give a community to Indian students. Our only agenda is to make sure that we can provide a legal channel for international students and Indian students to be able to convey their issues. So provide them that advocates. Because look, at the end of the day, Arnur, as an international student, you're yourself with an influential voice, much more than any international student I feel like in the United States. There are only certain things you can do still, right? It takes a collection of domestic students with the perspective of international students outside of the business, right? My vested interest is not the university and making money from tuition. My business is not the agent fee getting referral fees, right? Mine is not a business where I'm getting referral fees and transaction by how many customers I do, etc. No, it takes someone from the outside to be able to advocate for your interests better. We haven't had that yet from the international student community. That's why we're there. And what I see, what my goal is to make the largest community. I want every student member. So there's two options. Your club at a campus, the ISA affiliates with us, and then you have direct membership. And when you have direct membership, it's for free. We will never charge any single money. But as soon as you get that membership, you basically have access to a very exclusive job board. You have access to forums that are specifically from Indian students. We do a lot of visa immigration workshops. We do a lot of finance workshops, social security, trying to understand, paying taxes, etc. And then we obviously do events and a lot of career-centric workshops. So hosting pro bono legal hours to hosting, a finance happy hour, right? Getting to meet people, getting to engage with them, building those connections, and just having a good time. You already have enough stress. You're already paying everyone. NWS wants you to not pay us and just have a good time. and learn a few things.
Incredible. I love the initiative you have taken. And what inspires you to continue doing it? Like, I mean, of course, you saw the problem when you were a student. And what inspires you to keep taking it forward?
The students. I think what inspires us is the dreams of international students, of Indian students willing to take all those risks. Look, Arnoor, you came in 2016, from a small state in North India, probably one of the first few in your family to do so, right? Because you had dreams, you had ambitions, you had hopes. And I think there are a lot of students like that. And that's what inspires us to be able to give as much opportunity, as much equal access, as much safety, but as much knowledge as we can to be able to give them that same level of life, that same standard of living that a domestic student has. At the end of the day, our inspiration is the audacity to dream that Indian students have, and that excites me every day. And every day, I'm like, how else can we help better support it? Right? How else more can we help with regulation and make sure that our thoughts and ideas are conveyed to the right people at the right time? And there's a clarity of information given because there's just so much happening, and Indian students deserve to get it plain, simple, and out there.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sudhanshu, for giving out time. I really love your work. I hope you continue taking forward that initiative and continue to help more international students. And I hope US continue to run in the capitalistic way with international students like it has been from the last few years. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.